So South Africa's property market is far from transformed, even in the affordable housing market. That's according to the Department of Human Settlements. South Africans earning between 3,500 rand all the way up until 22,000 rand increasingly have difficulty accessing home loans due to rising inflation and high interest rates. That's also drive up the cost of living and their reliance on debt. Well, the department further revealed that black applicants are twice as likely to have their applications rejected. Government is now considering introducing interventions to improve affordability and transforming the sector. But for more on this, we are now joined by the Human Settlements Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi. Minister, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I can tell you that this conversation certainly will garner quite a lot of interest because, as I made the point earlier, we all need a roof over our heads, but we all want to own the roof over our heads. And you've made the point to say that you really want to look at having financial institutions declaring and giving reasons for why they do decline a home loan application when they do. Why was that an important point for you to make, Minister? I think let's start there.
No, good morning to you and good morning to the listeners, Naledi. The first important thing is that they are obligated by law for them to disclose. So in 2000, there was a recognition that we have majority of the people who come from previously disadvantaged communities that are trying to access loans, mortgages, and they're not. And there's been allegations, and I say there's allegations, some are myth, where there is issues of racial profiling. People believe that because of their color of skin, therefore they are not able to get the necessary support. So the act was then done to close that gap, to be able to protect South Africans, but to ensure that we can all have adequate housing. Remember, the Constitution implores us as government to do everything in our powers to ensure that the policies, there's laws that ensures that people have adequate housing as a right and have shelter as a right. Now we are sitting and saying, we are analyzing across the country. Why do you have informal settlements in these numbers? Why do you have backyard dwelling in these numbers? Why do we have people sitting in dilapidated buildings? And many of them, when we interact with them, they say, actually, we have money we can pay, but we can't afford to own a house. And that's why we started drilling deeper into the stats that we are receiving, data that we are receiving from the banks. Now, the first concern I had was the report from the Office of Disclosure that say not all banks are given the information that would allow us to be able to utilize as a data analysis to make the determination of where we are sitting. That's the first concern. But when they don't fully disclose, then the penalty based on the act is 100,000. It's just minimum. I mean, for a bank, if you say to them, pay us penalty of 100,000, it's like a drop in an ocean. They will not feel the pinch. And that's where my concern is. But the reality is that I'm sitting with a lot of people who need housing, which is a mandate that the president has said, Minister, go and ensure that we have adequate housing and affordable housing for South Africans. Now, it's not about those only who are needing free homes from government, but it's people who say, I am earning a living, I want to own a property, and I'm prepared to pay. But there is no products for them in the South African market to respond to them.
Yeah, so there's two issues here. So no products for this particular, I suppose, grouping of individuals from 3,500 up until 22,000. That's because of the high cost of living. And we'll get to that in a moment. But Minister, if you allow me to sit with this issue around racial profiling, because this one is going to get a lot of ears pricked, Minister, because there's the concern of, well, certainly even if you do have the disclosure from a financial institution, not going to admit to racial profiling. And so one could argue that even this debate in and of itself is fruitless and is not going to give you the sort of results that you want to get in giving people access to the housing market.
No, it does. If the disclosures are fully, we can either confirm or deny the allegation. So, for example, what we request is that they must tell us how many people they've given loans to and to what value. They must categorize in terms of race. Who are those people? We don't need the names. We don't need the personal addresses. So we protect personal information and client and bank confidentiality. So you just give us data to say 50 people, out of the 50 people we've given loans, 10 are black, 3 are white, 3 are what. That's all we want. And then out of those, you give us in terms of geographical spread. Where are they? Are they in Soweto, all of them? So that we see the patterns. Do we continue to perpetuate apartheid spatial planning, where majority of the black people continue to live in the outside areas or in one areas? Or are we seeing movement of people into previously white-owned suburbs, for example? That's the trend we want to see. The last point would be, in those people, for example, as we said yesterday when we did the media briefing, we also look at women. You'd remember, in terms of property ownership, previously under apartheid, women were not allowed to be property owners. So they were declared as perpetual minors. Are we dealing away with apartheid legacies in the rightful manner, as South Africans are calling for us to do? So this information will allow us to be able to answer those questions to South Africans, to say, no, actually, many of the women are coming. And when I say I'm concerned about the number of black people, because we expect higher number of black people to be in the approval line rather than previously advantaged or previously disadvantaged, because previously they were closed out. So the numbers must be higher for previously disadvantaged, because in population they're higher, but because previously they did not own. So that number must be higher compared to the previously advantaged. That's how you analyze the data.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is you certainly have, even in your press briefing, given us some numbers as well, talking about how since 2024, the NHFC has approved, that of course being the National Housing Financing Corporation, having approved 1,000 of the non-mortgage subsidies at a value of close to 160 million rand. So obviously work being done there to close the gap, but it obviously is not going to happen fast enough, right? Let's talk a little bit about how we continue to make housing more affordable. Which other stakeholders need to be coming to the party? And so how do you then formalize engagements, particularly with the financing institutions? And I'm talking now about the big five, for instance, that there is a structure in place moving forward.
Yeah. The first issue concern, as we are saying, the people who are earning between 3,501 and 22,000 that we are currently able to support are the first home buyers. Now, the categories of previously who have owned and are do not own anything are not covered at all. And that's the concern. And that's why we are calling financial sectors to also help us find products that can help in this area. Number two is that between ourselves as public sector and private sector, there is nothing available in the market for anyone who earns between 22,000 and 30,000. They end up in rental space. So that's what we are saying as well. Can we find solutions? These are the proposals that we have on the table. For example, we just did a launch of a product of Zakhele Khaya. This is partnership between Capitec, NHFC, which is government, and cash build, the cash build. Now there it's what materials that people can be able to go and build. So we are calling for various sectors, including the financial sector, to say, can we not be fixated in one product as in mortgage? Can we also give loans, not personal loans, because it's expensive in personal loans to be able to repay because the interest rates are higher. Let's look at packaging, other options and other products that can respond to the market. And that's the intervention we are calling for. We acknowledge as government that we are doing something, but it's not sufficient because we have limited resources. So we are calling for FDIs, we are calling from PIC, for example, your government employee scheme, to also look at the government employees who are in majority, who are staying in backyard dwelling and all those things, so that we can utilize some of their monies to be able to support them to buy properties, to build in the land, because we do have land release. We release land for them, and therefore we expect them to be able to build. So if we have packages that we can work together as public and private sector, we will be able to respond adequately to the issues of the gap market in South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a lot to do, Minister, and I think you're one of the fortunate ministers in the sense that you were able to hold on to your department even into the 7th administration. And so what I'm able to then is take you back to some of the promises and commitments that you made prior to the May 29 elections. One of them, I think it was in April this year, when you talked about wanting to convert old unused buildings into residential properties for government employees. I mean, and this is such an important issue considering what we saw with the burning of buildings in the CBD. You may remember one of which was a government building. Where are you with that initiative, Minister?
The first point was we called on Public Works to come on board. So we established the teams that would work on, firstly, audit. So we started with Johannesburg. Work is being done in eThekwini. In Johannesburg, we've been able to ascertain the number of buildings that are owned by the city, which is about 148 of those buildings that we're saying we need to repurpose. The city itself has gone out to award to several of entrepreneurs to be able to repurpose and refurbish the building, social housing and affordable housing. The challenge there then is around, some of them have not started because of the buildings have been hijacked. So we've asked for the law enforcement agencies to assist us in that regard. eThekwini is doing the same on audit. So the first point was audit for us to be able to know which building is owned by who, and then we start with the buildings by government. That's why the work is being done. I will be in eThekwini, where we are going to finalize the implementation plan in eThekwini in the next month, together between myself, the province, and local government.
Sure.
In Johannesburg, unfortunately, the instability affected us. But I'm happy MMC Mabaso and Mayor Dada Morero are on board. We have agreed on working together and fast-tracking this area. So we want to take over all the buildings in inner city and then start working. In Kabeja, there are some buildings that we have started as well.
Right.
We've asked them to do the audit. So in all the metros, we'll start with the metros in that regard, start refurbishing them and converting them into affordable housing space.
Did you say 148 government-owned buildings in the CBD, Minister?
Yes.
That's quite a number. So we'll be following up with you on that
and
one.
not
because
only government
that's a lot of capacity.
JPC
Yeah.
specific.
Yes.
There is.
Yes.
It's a lot of capacity. That's why we said, let's not go for the privately owned ones for now.
Okay.
Let's take the ones that are owned by government.
Let me ask you this.
Because if we do those,
Yeah.
then we'll have made an inroad.
All right. I need to maximize on time, Minister, but there's the issue of RDP houses. I mean, we can talk about the missing middle or the gap market. There are those who can access RDP houses, but you've got quite a big problem in your department to deal with, and that is people simply selling RDPs. I mean, where is law enforcement there in assisting you to crack down on the selling and even leasing out of RDP houses?
Yeah, what we have taken a decision, as I announced, is that we are going to appoint a law firm that will bring in a team of forensics and all that, for them to help us with the audit across. So it's type of zivese, but we decided not to do a low-level zivese because we do believe that there are allegations of what we call syndicates, which will need to be prosecuted, will need to go to court. So what we have done is that with the legal team that we are appointing and all that, they will be able to do a forensic put together a document that can be used in court so that we are able to prosecute those who are selling. And that, because we've found that is in massive number. There are people that we have given, and because you need people who are capable. Remember the X says, if you have an RDP after 8 years, you can sell. So those guys should be able to help us with the forensics, to help us in terms of saying, auditing properly, making sure that this one didn't sell illegally.
Right.
So that when they do that report and go for prosecution, it's actually cases that will be successful. And this is the public-private partnership that we can call, where government capacity is supported by private sector.
Yeah, once you unseal those syndicates, come and bring them to us as well here on Newzroom Afrika, Minister. We really do appreciate your time. And thank you so much for speaking to us. Human Settlements Minister this morning, Mmamoloko Kubayi.